In this video, we are going to prove to you that God exists. To try to prove God exists is hard to do.
Yeah.
Because God is not a physical being.
Right.
He's a spiritual being. And really, the only place that we can read about God is in the Bible. Saying as a non-believer as well that I don't believe in the Bible anyway, so that's really not much proof that God exists anyways.
Right.
And I don't believe all this hubbub that you guys tell me about nature and evolution and stuff like that. That means nothing. So the question is, how do we prove that God is real? For us to prove to you that God is real, we have to take a look at the life of Jesus Christ and what he claimed to be and what he said while he was on earth 2,000 years ago. So let's start here. What proof do we have that Jesus Christ existed? I mean, do we know that Jesus, right, he was a real person, he lived on earth, or is he just some little fairy tale that's passed down from generation to generation to generation of this person of Jesus Christ that supposedly lived? There is overwhelming historical evidence that a person named Jesus Christ existed. What is historical evidence?
Let's look at that.
Well, okay, that's a good point. Yeah. Yes, let's look at that.
Let's do that.
Historical evidence is where they find writings about any person. It can be any person in history about Jesus Christ, but we're taking Jesus Christ. So they take all these writings about Jesus Christ, and historians authenticate. Is this a real writing? I mean, is this, is it real? Is it something that doctored up? Mm-hmm. Right. Does it make sense? So the historians will go through and they'll say, okay, this is a legitimate piece of writing about Jesus Christ. And so they'll compile all these. And the way a document is more accurate is the closer that this document was written to when this person lived, makes it a lot more accurate. Jesus lived 33 AD, and then in 35 AD, this person wrote something about Jesus Christ after 2 years after he left. Yeah. It's like, wow, this is really accurate.
Right.
Versus a person that wrote about Jesus Christ 600 years. I mean, this person didn't even know Jesus, but this person obviously knew Jesus Christ. So the closer writings they can say to the life of the person makes it, bam, more accurate.
It reminds me of that game we used to play, telephone.
Yeah.
Remember?
And that's a good argument.
You'd whisper something in somebody's ear, and by the time you got around to your 15th friend, it was like completely, somewhat the same, but different. So you can see how, over the years, things kind of get changed. So the closer you get to that person, it's much easier to have an accurate account of what actually happened.
So let's give you some historical evidence, documented historical evidence of Jesus and other people that lived in the past.
Let's go to history class.
Okay. I never liked history.
You did it?
No, I never liked. I thought it was boring. I had anyways, I didn't like history.
I didn't like it then, but I love it now.
Yeah.
I really love all the history now.
It's pretty cool. So Aristotle, they found 5 copies of writings about Aristotle. 5 copies that were authenticated that said this is real about Aristotle. 5 copies.
And everybody believes in Aristotle.
A lot of people believe in Aristotle. Most people would say, oh yeah, he lived. Plato, they found 7 authenticated copies of him and writings, of his writings. And I mean, authenticated. Now, there could be a lot of people that wrote about him and blah, blah, blah. But these are called authenticated, legitimate copies that prove this person existed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not very many.
No.
And everybody talks about it.
I know. They use him as a philosopher and how great he is. They quote him and stuff like that. Okay. Socrates, 100 authenticated copies or manuscripts were found. Authenticated.
That's better.
That's a little bit better, but you think, 100, right? Homer's Iliad had 1,565 copies were found.
Wow.
So the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the 4 Gospels that tell about Jesus, 5,843 copies were found, not only in the Greek and Hebrew manuscripts.
Wow.
So Homer, they found 1,100 years after they lived, but Jesus, they found 30 years 30 years after his lifetime. Well, yeah, but people
were living with
they
him,
lived 65, 85 years old. I guess what I'm saying is these people knew Jesus, and that makes it authenticated. I mean, this person lived when Jesus lived.
Wow, that is amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Do you have a thought?
Well, I was going to say, in Case for Christ,
right?
Didn't they say that one of them, if you stacked up all the papers, it was only like 4 feet tall or something like that. But if you stacked up all the documents for Jesus,
it'd be like
it was like a mile.
It was a mile high. It would be a mile high.
Huge.
All the authentic documents.
I mean, the difference was absolutely extraordinary.
They say that nothing else in history comes close to the evidence that Jesus Christ really lived.
I mean, how can you not believe this?
Well, your heart's hard and you don't want to believe it. In saying that, I think that we can confidently say that a person named Jesus Christ lived on this earth 2,000 years ago, went to the cross, and was resurrected. And I could go into more proof about his resurrection and did he really rise from the dead, because that's another thing. Did he really rise? And if you guys want a really good movie, if you're really interested in this, is a movie for Case for Christ. This is a guy, Lee Strobel, that was a very smart guy, journalist for the Chicago Sun-Times. His wife became a Christian and he hated it. Hated it. And he set out on a mission to prove that he did not exist. So he did all the evidence, and he finally came back, and he was frustrated at one point in the movie, and he just didn't want to believe. And one guy said, "You're a reporter. Take your evidence, write the evidence down, and let the evidence prove or not prove." And so he did that against his better thing. He didn't want to do it. And he came home and he says, "I cannot prove that he did not exist. There is overwhelming evidence that he existed." So now that we can agree, hopefully, that a person named Jesus Christ existed, let's take a look and see what he said.
Let's do that.
All right, Kim.
All right, we're going to go to the great book of John. All right, this is John 10:30, and it says, "I and the Father are one." You want me to go on?
I think that kind of speaks for itself. So he's saying that I am God. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, or one. They're the same.
You can't make anything out of that.
It's pretty cut and dry. Okay.
John 14:9, and this is Jesus talking to one of the disciples. Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?"
So now you're kind of seeing Jesus is saying, hey, to see me is to see God.
Right. John 14:6. A lot of us should know this one.
Yeah, this is a good one. Jesus
said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Right. John 5:19. So Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise."
You can see in the Bible by reading the New Testament that there is a connection between Jesus and God.
And it is a hard concept for some people. It's a hard concept even for Christians to understand the Trinity and God being the Father and Jesus being the Son and the Holy Spirit, and how they can all be one but yet separate.
Right. That's a whole nother video.
That's a whole nother video.
The Trinity.
I just thought of this.
What?
One of the reasons why they put Jesus to death was because he was proclaiming to be God. He was proclaiming to be the Messiah.
So, I mean, he talked about this so much back in the time and the era of back then. I mean, it really made the religious leaders unhappy that he was claiming to be
blasphemy.
God. Right, it's blasphemy.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's one of the reasons that he was put to death.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah.
I have a little story for you.
Oh, no, not a story.
No, this is a really good way to kind of picture this whole thing that we're talking about.
Okay.
So, you have an ant colony, and you're a big, gigantic human.
Yeah.
Well, how would you communicate or kind of blend in with that ant colony as this big, gigantic human?
Right.
You become an ant, right?
Right.
So that you could be one with them and feel their feelings and do what they do, and right? You cute little ant.
She's so much about feelings all the time. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, if you wanted to show yourself, I'm a human,
right,
and show yourselves to the ant, you become an ant.
That's a good analogy of saying why Jesus, God sent his son to be with us so that he could be an example as a human.
Right. And it's
God.
a good way for us to know God.
Yeah.
Because God says, okay, I'm this spiritual being. How do I get
Implement
humans
myself.
to know
Yeah.
me? And he says, I'm going to send my Jesus. I'm going to send my Jesus.
My Jesus.
I'm going to send my Jesus. It's kind of personal, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to send Jesus, my son, and that's me. Well, thank you for that cute little ant story. What you described has a really fancy name for it. It's called the hypostatic union. And what that means is that Jesus Christ, while fully being God, took on being human form. So while he was a total human, bled, cried, had emotions, we could see him here on earth, he was still God the Son.
Right. God the Son.
Well, you start to get into the Trinity a little bit. And I know it gets a little confusing where you have, God the Spirit, God the Son, and God.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's a whole nother video where they're all three the same person, but they're still separate.
Yeah.
But to see any one of them is where you see God. If you're out there and you're sitting there saying, I just don't believe in God, or maybe you have this bad history or bad feelings, or there's something that happened in your life that you don't know how God could let that happen to you. I would really encourage you, for right now, just put those feelings aside and really just explore who Jesus was.
Yeah.
I mean, forget the God concept. Forget, he wants to give me the 10 Commandments. He wants to control my life. All this other kind of stuff. I don't want to believe in God because I don't want to change my life. But start to read about Jesus and what a good man he was and what he stood for and the principles that he said, and just get to know Jesus. And in the Bible, you have the 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I would suggest starting with John.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just get to know him.
Just give
him a chance. Get to know him
as a historical figure. I mean, just like we had to study George
Washington, right?
Abraham Lincoln or Aristotle.
Yeah.
You had to. You don't know them, so you have to study.
And go in with an open heart and say, I just want to see this Jesus guy.
And maybe that's it. Maybe a lot of people believe that there was a Jesus.
Right.
But it's hard for them to believe that God exists and has created all of this.
Right. If you start to believe in Jesus, you have to take what he says seriously, or why.
Oh, he's just a liar.
Right. Or why just do it if you don't believe it? So then you have to wrestle with the fact, well, Jesus said he was God, so obviously he said it all the time. So there's something to this.
Right. Or he's lying.
Or he's lying.
Crazy.
Well, that's
a lot of people think he's a crazy.
Well, no, but that's the other. You just jumped in. You are always just like one step ahead of me.
Sorry.
So you have to answer the question, and this is the 3 answers you have to give after knowing all this. So was Jesus in you? And answer this. So was Jesus a liar? So I don't believe anything he said. He was just a flat out liar. Okay. Right. Or he was a lunatic. I mean, the guy was crazy. I mean, why would you proclaim your God knowing they're going to kill you?
Right.
I mean, he's a crazy man. He's just off his rocker. He made all these nutsy claims and how he could die for everybody's sins and healed. Yeah, exactly. Healing all these people. He was a loony bin, right?
Yeah, right.
Or he was Lord. Everything he said is true. Right. So there's 3 choices that you have to make. And we want you to put down below in the comments what you believe. And hey, you know what? If you think he's a lunatic, just let us know and why. I mean, if people just kind of put like a comment like, lunatic, tell us why. I mean, I want to know.
It's really interesting to hear other people's thoughts and what they think about this. And I think it helps other Christians too, and even non-believers. That helps them to see both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
What you need to see so you can make up your mind.
It's a journey.
Yep.
A lot of people just don't believe right then. It's a journey to
Yep.
Jesus.
Yep.
A journey to Jesus.
A journey to Jesus.
I just made that up.
That was really good. That was like a Holy Spirit thing.
The journey to Jesus?
Yeah, man. I like it.
So, my lovely wife.
Hi.
Why don't you give some encouraging words for
I would encourage
some
you.
Feelings.
Well, let me speak.
Fine.
I would encourage you that if you are a believer or a non-believer, or you have friends, let them watch this video or introduce them to the Case for Christ, and we'll put the link in the description.
Yeah.
Because you can't get mad at them if they don't believe.
No.
And don't get mad at yourself if you're kind of like, I really just don't believe this stuff, because that's all just part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your decision to make to change this person.
Right.
If you have a friend that you're trying to get, I have so many friends and family that it's very scary as a Christian because you know where they're going to go if you don't believe.
Right.
So it's really hard to just be like, oh, it's okay, believe what it went. You're like, I really need you to believe. I mean, there's like an urgency.
Yeah.
But you can't do it. God's got to work on their heart. So
He does. Prayer
is the best thing you can do. Anyways, we hope this video helped to at least intrigue some thought processes.
Intrigue.
And just look into it yourself. Your journey to Jesus. Or is it journey with Jesus?
Journey to Jesus.
Or to or with if you're already with him. Okay, anyways. All right, you guys, we will see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.